Welcome
Matt,
to
let's
the
see the picture of the deer.
What channel?
Welcome to the Threat Insights weekly group call. If you're curious, we're all on the edge of our seats to find out about the deer in Matt's yard, the pumpkin on its head. We'll share in the recording just so everyone knows. But let's get started on our agenda. We didn't have any follow-up from previous discussions, and we have one demo item. I'm just gonna go ahead and share the agenda for the sake. There's one demo and a few items for planning breakdown. So Savas shared us both the MR and the demo. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, please do. He is out this week. So any,
but got a chance to look at it. It looks great. Yeah, I see some comments from Daniel and Alexander with things to show as well.
This page looks like it's out of date.
do I just, hold on. Let's just see. There we go. It's mismanagement of tabs on my part. I've had this open for too long. Thanks, Daniel and Wayne. Daniel, sure. I didn't get a chance to see your demo. Looks like other folks did though. Does anyone have any questions?
To answer Andy's question, that's being handled as a separate issue.
Okay, I kind of figured, but I'll keep an eye out.
And the little demo is great in the animated GIF, Daniel, in the issue. If you could put it on unfiltered as well, that would make, maybe even like a 60-second walkthrough. That would be great. And then I think it'd be more accessible to more people, more findable by more people. So in general, if you could do that, at some point, that'd be awesome.
Okay, will do.
And Alexander shared a screenshot of the identifier and scanner columns.
And I feel like there's going to be a question coming from Wayne on why there's not a video on unfiltered.
Yeah, kind of.
The
screenshot's good too. But yeah, I mean, I think a quick, even 1 or 2 90-second video. They people watch them. I'm always surprised how many people actually watch them and get information about what we're doing. So if you get a chance, Alexander, that'd be great.
Yes, I was gonna say I have not put one up because what I have now is only part of the ticket that I'm implementing, the third-party list view, the scanner, and so I was planning on having a complete video at the end of when the ticket gets closed. Any
other questions? I know we had challenges with browser width issues, changing the width and then text would overwrite. So not that this change would reintroduce that problem, but just because it was introduced once, it might get introduced again accidentally. So it looks like, Alexander, you're going to give another try to verify?
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because there was already an issue filed for the identifier having the same issue where it bled over into the scanner column, and that has been resolved. But it means I should give it another go.
As long as we're keeping that in mind, that makes me happy. And Lindsay, you have a thought?
I was just typing what Alexander was going to say as he was saying it. We already had a bug reported on this. I think in general, we need to do a better job of testing long strings on the dashboard.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I have an open question in the MR, but I can also voice it here. Trying to make our column widths more consistent. Is there a way we could define those values or define a percentage?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I know for the pipeline security tab, there definitely is. I can look again. I'm sure there's a way to do it in the security dashboards as well, though.
Okay.
Andy,
I'll look into that.
Do you have I don't know if there's a hard and fast guideline from UX where we would actually use the ellipses, ... to truncate long text versus doing a hard wrap, even if it is like a long continuous string?
There isn't really like good overflow rules like built into our design system just yet. But I think in the mocks that are going to be through planning breakdown, I've built in some of like the prescribed overflow behaviors that we'd like to see in the security dashboard, as well as like maybe some margin width. That's this, no, I'm just kidding. I'm hoping for anything. Just because like, yeah, some of these strings go super long.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is it might just be a little bit more bulletproof if we had a hard and fast rule, because like for the gymnasium identifier, for example, I don't normally look at projects that have those, but they're sample projects, so they tend to be CVs and CWEs. They're a lot shorter, and then the gymnasium ones are like this long GUID with the thing. We're like, it broke it, but we didn't know that that was an option. So.
Yeah, I commented in other MR that was about the fix for the identifier column that Alexander brought up, and that we can go to 2 lines and then do the ellipses. I think we can give enough information even in a small column at 2 lines to break the gymnasium hash into 2 lines. I don't know if anybody can interpret that hash, I'd give them like $100 the top of it, but it is help in identifying the individual vulnerabilities. So
we do know what the maximum length for those fields are. So if you have,
perhaps we should truncate them. Have the UI truncate for. Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at, right? You don't really know you don't really have to see examples. If the database field says 200 characters, then we need to have a rule in place for it. That could be one of the things that we check. We improve in our testing.
So that'd be a better way to go about it, is define character count versus pixel rem or percentage.
Well, that I don't know what works better on the testing framework, Alexander. Maybe we take it offline. But the point that I was making is that because Matt mentioned, well, I didn't know that the identifier could be longer. But if we look into the database, we do know how long everything can be. And if something can be super long, rest assured at some point, something will come up to fill up that space, and then things might break.
Yeah, that's a great point, Thiago. Maybe we should raise that as we're making some of these UI changes, just to point out, like, we need to at least account for the case, even if it's not something that we've got in there today, especially since this is a lot of this, we'd hope that more third parties are going to integrate. If it's in the spec, then they should have every right to not see something broken if they're filling out the fields the way we tell them they can, even if it's different.
Seems reasonable. Great questions. Thank you.
I know, Andy, you said at the beginning of this that you'd already asked that question in the MR. That'd probably be the better place in the agenda for this to continue it and create any follow-up issues to adjust how we handle long strings. So we'll just continue that conversation there in the MR. Great. All right. So unless if anyone has any other questions about any of the demos or previous discussions, we'll move on to planning breakdown. All right. We discussed this last week and I was asked to create an issue. So I put it back on the agenda and it's in planning breakdown. So this came from discussions around some of the data integrity issues that we've been seeing. And I think Jonathan was the one maybe who asked for this, is that right? To look at other legacy models to see if we ran into this problem anywhere else.
Yes.
So I don't know, maybe this is not appropriate for planning breakdown. Maybe this should skip right to refinement and have you help us make more sense out of it.
I don't, I might have already accidentally done it. I mean, I added those tasks to evaluate the kind of the I guess it would be the implementation of this one to identify what redundant information we have in conjunction with Mehmet's issue of that 915, determining if the existing data needs to be copied and then do a background migration with that. And getting that first one done, and I actually put a note in that issue as well to kind of prioritize updating the database model so that we can see where we have redundancy and where we need to look. I should put a note in there about that too. I put it in the other issue. I'll add a note into this one.
Oh, in the 915 issue?
Yeah,
okay.
I think we should, given that these are all coming from engineering, we should be able to move them to refinement and finish them asynchronously. And if there's any questions that for product that might affect anything in product, we can bring it up again. That's my suggestion.
Sounds good.
Quite, Matt, with what we want to do next, and from your roadmap and this, where would do you agree this should be something in 13.3? Where does it fit from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like any other technical debt, I'd like to include some of that in every iteration. It seems like this is something that's going to bite us harder the longer we leave it alone. Data integrity is always a dirty word, so.
Okay.
I mean, unless this is at the expense of all feature work and all other bugs, then I say let's keep this where that is.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure you're aligned too. The only comment, I put it in a comment in the issues. Let's just, and I know, Jonathan, this was the bane of your existence for a while, of the load data migrations put on the database from the launch of first-class vulns. So I just put keep an eye on that as well. If it's potentially going to put a high load on the database when we do it, how we'd handle that. My guess is it won't, but just keep that in mind at the beginning.
Sure.
So we don't have of the database maintainers being really unhappy with things because of the potential high load.
I mean, so far they, with Ross's background migration and the last one I did, they've been pretty good about the load on there, especially since I mimicked what Ross had done. And as long as we go off of kind of what we did there, those are basically approved kind of
patterns.
Patterns to work through.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
we have a baseline to work off of on those.
Great work on that, Jonathan, getting us prepared for it.
Cool. Tiago, can you move this one through the workflow and assign it to someone for refinement? Thank you. Moving on. This is an item that made it through design recently. Pretty straightforward. But we'd bring it here. So keeping in mind that we're talking about planning breakdown. Do we understand the work boundaries? Do we feel that all the requirements are clear enough? And do we believe this is something that we can complete within one iteration? This is the addition of this detected timestamp. I know, Alexander, you've already asked some great questions on this. I think you've gotten answers to all of them already.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that needs to be verbalized from my perspective in my questions right now.
I see some carrots on here. I love the carrots. Did anyone else besides Alexander have any questions or topics that they want to bring up about this, or feel that it doesn't meet our planning breakdown criteria to move it forward to refinement? Question for, I guess, Tiago and Matt. We've been talking a lot about using epics and design issues. This is a very, kind of compact, discrete issue. Do we want to create epics and turn this into a design issue and use our full vision of work breakdown for this?
Yes, I'd like to do that. And I don't think I've seen this, or maybe I've seen it a long time ago. I'm having a look now.
It's pretty new.
It's only 3 weeks old.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the grand scheme of threat insights issues, it's a baby.
I guess my question would be, is there a need to split out the work, not just in terms of the feature itself, but to front end and back end?
I mean, it can be. I would think the only back end work would just be adding the detected state coming back to GraphQL, which or the detected time, which I guess would be the time that the record was created. I don't know if we have it. Any other timestamp on that?
I think we don't. We already have that information.
Okay.
Because it's the pipeline time.
Okay.
Do you think we do have that information, Daniel? To be clear.
Yes, I believe we have that already.
So this could potentially be a front end only effort then?
Yeah, the reason I was asking is if all the work is self-contained, not just within the issue itself, but we'll say the engineer, the need to split it out would be. This was the case that I think, Tiago, this is before you joined, that I called out as like, this is the happiest path. I don't think we need the epic, because then you've got a container that's just holding the one thing that is directly actioned by one person.
Yeah, I believe this one is a case like that.
Okay, well, we can make that decision asynchronously. I'm kind of with Matt. I don't want to create issues for the sake of creating issues. If it's going to solve a problem or provide us with some more organization or insight, I'm all for it. I also know that Tiago wants to get comfortable with this new process that we're moving to and, you know, get into the habit of using it. So we'll decide what to do moving forward and make that clear prior to this getting assigned to someone for refinement. All right. And so then we have a suite of other, call it that, dashboard related issues. So about restructuring all three of our dashboards. Matt, is there one, or Andy, is there one of these that's best to look at first? Assuming it's not the group one because of the way we're moving things around into different pages.
Well, they're kind of a little bit different. So I'll say at a high level, the intent of all of these is to start moving the vulnerability list itself out into a separate component. And then over time, we'll really build the dashboard into, like today, it's not much of a dashboard. This is more like sort of the fingertip information, but we need to get the informational structure in place. The instance level is going to be adding navigation where there is none today. So that's probably the biggest one. The group level is probably the most straightforward in that there's already the two chart components that will stay behind as the dashboard. The project is actually a little weird because there isn't a dashboard today. It is just the vulnerability list. So we would actually leverage one of these components from the group in the project or the instance dashboard. So a lot of words to say. Actually, Lindsay, I respectfully disagree. Group might be the best place to start.
Oh, let's go there then. I meant to say project when I said group earlier, my bad. I always like to start with the designs. And, you know, to Wayne's point that he sent one-on-one to me, we don't necessarily need to share in this meeting. I know people have liked it before, but please feel free to just follow along in your own browser and ignore me if you want to here in the screen share.
Yep. My comment on this was it, and thanks, Lindsay, was that this looks great. Can we do it, and separately, how can we do it iteratively, not like do the entire dashboard for, you know, I don't know, group in one fell swoop, but do things more iteratively and roll it out iteratively as well. I could see us going either route, and, you know, the more iteratively we can do it, which might hurt usability in the short term as we do all the other changes, of course, right? But if there's a way to do that, which there may not be a convenient way to do that, I'd prefer to see us do that. But what do folks think?
Yeah, I think there we can break it out into separate issues for implementation. These tickets are the designs, and I think our new process is to create a design ticket, and then once all the questions have been answered, we close it and then create implementation issues. Is that correct?
That is correct, but I want to add one detail that I think reflects what Wayne's question is. You know, these designs could break down into multiple MVCs. If we can find ways to make these smaller buckets that would benefit the customer and get those out into, like, this particular design issue might end up representing three, let's just hypothetically say 3 different MVCs. And then within each of those MVCs, I'll call them feature issues, we would break down implementation issues, which would be the front end and back end tasks. You might consider them like subtasks if you've worked in Jira, based on those feature issues or those feature MVCs. So Wayne, I think, is kind of trying to get to that feature MVC point where this is a bigger umbrella over that.
What Lindsay said.
I have a diagram that I've been working on if anybody wants to see it.
Does that sound reasonable to you, Daniel?
Yep.
So,
And,
you know, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh,
Go
no,
ahead,
you.
Lindsay.
No, you.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I agree that this could be broken up into several MVCs. Like, there's a lot of work here to the vulnerability reports, adding tabs instead of like filtering, adding columns and stuff. That could certainly go in, like, if you want like a phase 2. Like phase 1 could simply be create the dashboard and move the dashboard components over there. And that certainly seems within one iteration, and then have the vulnerability list being its own thing. That seems doable in one iteration, and then iterating upon the vulnerability list to update it to this mock could be the phase 2.
I like that. I think there's a few other hidden improvements on this view of the vulnerability report as well. I know I asked a question, one of the other issues, I'm sure it applies here, that these values, they currently just reflect what the detective vulnerabilities are, but they should update, according to Andy, based on filters selected. So things along those lines would fall into that latter vulnerability report MVC.
Yeah, correct. And adding the activity column and whatnot. All things that could come after the separation.
Does anyone else disagree with that breakdown that Alexander just described at a very high level? I am happy to take the action of creating those MVC, sorry, the word is escaping me right now. The feature issues for MVC, because I think that would reflect,
issue?
Thank you, implementation issue. I think that would reflect across at least both the group and the instance dashboard, but the project dashboard might be slightly different because we don't have those sort of reportlets here, you know, the side reports. So the work here is a bit different. And maybe we look at that one separately and see if that should be broken down in a different pattern.
Yeah, definitely. Because exactly what you said. Like the group and instance dashboard already have the dashboard components. So it makes sense to go that way. And then with this one, slightly different.
And Daniel or Alexander, have either of you noticed whether any backend support is needed? Are all the fields already available in GraphQL, that sort of stuff? Or haven't had a chance to find out?
Tiago, I haven't had a chance to look at that yet because I normally save that for refinement.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
Sorry, I just wanted to get the right word here that we're using. Vulnerability report. So is that kind of the breakdown that you're talking about, Alexander? You know, move things around and give it its own navigation so that the reportlets are on their own. And then the second one would be potentially could be even broken down into further issues, but we can cross that bridge when we get there around the updates specific to that vulnerability report and the functionality that's presented there.
Yeah, correct.
Does that sound okay to everyone for at least these first two? And then we can take a look at I think we have time still to take a look at the project security dashboard to see if we should have a separate breakdown for that one. Okay. So project, and hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at this already. I know these were late adds to the agenda. If folks want to wait and come back to this next week, we can. But
there's also like a link in the description that allows you to see all project instance group changes linked to Figma mocks. Hopefully this works. So this might be a better way to like view everything at one time.
Well, I know it's easy to gloss over the awesome work by Andy, so I don't want to gloss over it. Great work on this and all that you do, Andy. It really helps to make our product better.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I need to play around with this. Let's zoom to fit. No, that's not right either. So the top row, we're looking at project level. So Andy, you're saying to go from here. Do you want to drive, Andy? I mean, we only have a few minutes left, but clearly I don't know how to use Figma very well. Sure. I'm really flailing here.
That's okay. I will take over. Hold on, let me go back to the vulnerability.
And if we need to loop back around to this issue to discuss more next week, we can.
Desktop one. Share.
Thanks, Wayne. Wayne has a good point that we are behind time already.
I still have CEO shadow on the brain. That was.
It's a good reminder, Wayne.
Yeah,
it's okay.
That was
so
part
maybe
of my job on the shadow is to do those little reminders on timekeeping.
Can we all see this screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Only with a magnifying glass. Yes.
So just by looking at this, you can look at all the changes to the list that are being proposed in this version. I wouldn't say iteration. And then you can scroll down to view what those changes look like at the project level, including the breakout of a security dashboard, which, you know, TBD on the metrics, as well as the group level breakdown and what the list will look like, and instance as well, and how that will work going forward, including like the settings. If we look at the list, that's kind of why I was asking about the column list, because all the data in here is going to get very, very friendly with the introduction of activity. We have scan type identifier. We'd like to add in the ability to sort these rows. So this functionality does exist in the alerts list that the monitor team just enabled. So maybe we can steal some of that. And just identifying what the filters will be in these new rows, so activity. Scan type is TBD on the terminology there. But other than that, there aren't huge changes aside from the tabs, right? Detect the date. You'll note we don't do something what GitLab does normally, which is kind of say like 1 day ago, 1 week ago. We want to be a little more precise, because 1 week could be 9 days. Any questions?
What would be the time zone for that detected column?
I think they're local time zones, because when I hover over time zones in GitLab, I get Eastern Daylight. If not, I think the default is UTC.
Going back to the sorting, we may need to have like explicit, I guess, descriptions of how the sorting should be done, like whether it's case sensitive, case insensitive, if things should be sorted in a certain manual order or just alphabetically, et cetera, et cetera.
You're reading my mind. So we have this set up in the issue where we'll say date, severity level, descriptions alphabetical, identifiers alphabetical, scan types alphabetical, and activity is not sortable. And then the status we kind of define once the all tab is selected. So descending order. Yeah.
Cool, awesome.
Great. Well, we're at the end of our time. Sorry.
That's okay. You can have it back. But yeah, there's more, but that's kind of like how to look at the document thing, and it should be helpful.
Thank you, Andy. I think that'll help everyone to review this for the next discussion that we have. And for that discussion, we should hopefully have the further broken down versions of the above two MVCs that we talked about, the two dashboard issues. So I won't be here, so good luck. And I think that's the last agenda item, is there's some PTO coming up. So please take a look at who's going to be out in the next week or so.
Just real quick, I will say most of the changes to the list itself are contained in that project view. I think that's going to need to be last because it is such a wide component. The group and the instance dashboards are constrained by the widgets. So let's try to look at getting those broken down, like just the splits. We talked about the group at the instance level. And then I think the project is really going to be last with all the list updates.
Makes sense.
And I put a deer with a pumpkin on its head in the group thread insights channel.
Yay! I feel like I should share it so that people in the video can see it, but they'll just have to join our Thread Insights Slack channel. So thank you, everybody. I'll share this recording. Have a fantastic day.